Ladies and gentlemen, the two undisputed, spiritual, heavyweight champions of the world. Introducing first, fighting out of the Middle Eastern corner, from Nazareth in Galilee, Yeshua ben Yosef. And introducing his opponent, fighting out of the Asian corner, from Lumbini in Nepal, Siddhartha Gautama. What an upset! The crowd is in absolute shock as we're told the Buddha has refused to initiate any violence whatsoever. But Jesus has flipped over a table and cracked a whip. I don't know what's gonna happen. All eyes on the ring. Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to the Meditate More podcast, where it's all about helping you to meditate more consistently so you can reap all the incredible magical benefits that meditation can bring to your life today. And here is your host, Manny Mandala.
Hey, and welcome to episode 4 of the Meditate More podcast. I'm Manny Mandala, and if you're here for the first time, make sure to subscribe because we have a great show for you today. We have some power-packed content. Today we'll talk about a debate that's been going on for thousands of years, and it's not going anywhere, so I figured we'll settle it the old-fashioned way in the ring. On a more serious note, yes, we will talk about enlightenment, and we will compare Christianity and Buddhism as possible paths towards enlightenment or towards Christ consciousness. What's the straightest path to enlightenment, to heaven, to nirvana? Do we get there faster or better with the teachings of the Buddha or with the teachings of Jesus? We'll break that down in detail, and I'm going to back it up with science, specifically brain science, because enlightenment can be measured in brain scanners. There have been scientific experiments conducted with monks, and their brains were connected to functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, to EEG, to MEG, to PET scans. So yes, as I said in episode 1, we have solid scientific proof that meditation is worth it. So meditate more, the core message of my podcast, that's in the title, the Meditate More podcast. Next, we'll also talk about how meditation can help you, how it can help you get in better shape, get healthier, have more energy, look better, lose weight if that's something you want. We'll get into how this happens specifically, not just, oh, did you know that studies show that meditation is good for your health? No, I'll give you something very specific and tangible you can work with, and we'll discuss how you need to meditate to make that happen. Because it won't just happen from meditating. You need to add one ingredient to your meditation to make this happen, and I don't see this discussed much around the web. So chances are this will be new for you, so stick around for that part of the podcast. Second, we'll talk about the nuts and bolts of meditation, the practical stuff, and specifically we'll talk about how to make your brain faster. If you think of your brain as a computer, and I'm not saying it's a computer, that's an analogy, but if it was a computer, I would upgrade your CPU, your RAM, your hard drive, specifically your hard drive today. This was a major insight I had during a shamanic ceremony, so it's a new insight I want to bring from the spiritual realm to humanity. And last, I told you I was going to talk about the truth discovery method in this episode, but I realized we have to leave that for episode 5 because there is some prerequisite knowledge you need first, and I'll cover that today. Very important stuff. So we'll talk about all that. Should be a pretty awesome show. Before we do, I want to remind you to listen to this podcast at 1x speed. And speed controls are available on the player on my website, so it's really up to you, but I highly recommend 1x speed because here's the thing. If fast listening has become a compulsion, it's a problem. If 1x speed feels uncomfortable, it's a problem. It's a sign of an over-agitated mind. It's like anti-meditation. That means your mind has been altered to where normal conversational pace is uncomfortable. Have you noticed that people interrupt each other more than they did 5 years ago? I seem to have noticed that trend. I think the fast listening might be contributing to that. And of course, it's best to listen to this kind of spiritual material at a natural pace. Your mind needs a bit of time to think about these ideas, to contemplate them, to daydream a bit with the deeper philosophical topics. Next, if you haven't listened to the previous episodes yet, I would urge you, go back to episode 1 now and start there because today's episode builds on episode 1 to 3. This isn't like a news podcast where it's best to get the latest episodes. These episodes do build on each other. So it's more like a TV show where it's best to start with season 1, episode 1, and then go through it linear. Or it's like a math class, kind of how you have to learn counting before you can learn addition and subtraction, before you can learn multiplication and division, before you can learn variables and equations and so forth, right? So if you haven't listened yet, in episode 1, we talk about the missing key to meditation. It's actually the most important principle of meditation practice, and it's missing from most spiritual teachings today. In episode 2, we talk about the very foundation of spiritual practice. Without this foundation, you cannot make any progress on the spiritual path. And a recent survey shows that 57% of people in the West are missing this foundation these days. Not something you want to miss. In episode 3, we talk about how thoughts manifest our reality and the 6 missing keys of the law of attraction. You've heard of the law of attraction. There are 7 keys and only one of them is commonly known. The other 6 are in episode 3, so check that out. So if you haven't listened to the previous episodes yet, hit pause and listen to those now, then come back and today's episode will make a lot more sense. On top of all that, I also created the Meditate More challenge for you. And you know what I realized? A lot of my friends are into meditation or interested in meditation. And what I hear from them all the time is some variation of, I know meditation is important. I know it's good. I know it's useful. I really want to do it more. I just don't do it as much as I would like to. I'm not sure what's up with that. I know I should meditate more, so why don't I do it? And I used to have that problem too, but I finally solved it. And if you want to meditate more consistently, I can definitely help you with that. I'll teach you how in a brief and fun 7-day challenge. You can go to meditatemorechallenge.com to check that out. I just overhauled day 2 of the challenge. It's probably the part I'm most proud of because day 2 is going to change your life in a big way. It'll do much more than just help you meditate more. It'll give you complete control over your life back. And I know that's another bold promise, but you'll see if you try it. Day 2 is a game changer. The Meditate More challenge is free for now, and I'm just saying that to cover my butt in case somebody listens to this episode in the future and it's no longer free. At the time of recording, it's still free. So if you're interested, go to meditatemorechallenge.com. I think you'll really like it. And final point, you can also follow me on social media. You can find all the links at mannymandala.com. That's M-A-N-N-Y, mannymandala.com. All right, with the housekeeping out of the way, we'll get started. And I gotta say one thing, folks, things are getting stranger out there. Is it me or are things getting stranger? Something really weird happened to me since the last episode. I got an email from a person I don't know. I never met this person before. I've never talked to them before. And he sends me an email and he says, hey, I have your EMF meters. So I own some EMF meters, some electronic equipment. And this person took my meters and sent me an email saying, I have your stuff. I'll give it back to you if you pay me. I think it was about $150 he asked for. So I don't know if you've ever been in that situation before. Would you pay? Like, what would you do in this situation? But it gets stranger because then he says, you also have to write some stuff for me on some papers because otherwise I won't give you your EMF meters back even if you pay. I felt like I'm a child and he's my teacher in school and I have to hand in a paper. Like, what's going on? This is, of course, customs I'm talking about, right? Aduanas here in Central America. They also took my microphone, remember? A bunch of thieves. And I got to say, this is a very strange system we've built. People don't question these things, you know? But is this normal? I quoted Shakespeare in a previous episode from Macbeth where he says, life is a tale told by an idiot. We're the idiot. The unmeditative mind is the idiot. And the crazy stuff we see all around us in this world is the tale told by that idiot, by the unmeditative mind. They also took my juicer. They slapped 53% tax on that. They took my water filter. That was just 14%. Like, they really do make it up as they go. It's wild stuff. Anyway, we're going to get into our first core topic. And the first thing we'll talk about is something almost everybody wants. Better health, more energy, more fitness, maybe getting leaner, losing weight. You know, when I lived in Brazil on that farm I talked about, I used to drive into town every day to these lunch buffets. And in Brazil, they have these kilo places where they weigh the food and you pay by kilo or by pound. You go to the buffet and then they weigh your plate and they charge you based on what you actually eat. And I noticed something very interesting. Whenever I was meditating consistently, whenever I got my 2 hours of meditation every day, after a few days of that, I started to crave the healthy foods. I started to crave the salads, the veggies, the lean proteins. I would walk in there and get a water. I would just be drawn to the healthy foods. And whenever I was off the wagon with my meditation, for whatever reason, something else came up in life that stopped me from meditating 2 hours a day consistently, I would start craving the junk more. And if I was off the wagon for a few days, I would walk in there and I would grab the fries and the wheat, and I'd get a couple of Cokes, fried foods. And that was such a big insight for me. You've heard that health is a state of mind. Well, healthy eating is also so much about our state of mind. And here's how that works. A solid meditation practice can purify our state of mind. And often these cravings, they're impurities in our mind. They feel uncomfortable. The impurities in our mind are an unpleasant sensation, a dissatisfaction, a tension, a discomfort in our mind. And so we crave some kind of pleasant sensation to drown it out, to mute the discomfort, the subtle discomfort. And that discomfort is below the surface. It's in the subconscious mind. So we don't consciously realize it. We don't actually realize that we're craving some food because we want to drown out a subconscious unpleasant sensation beneath the surface. The only thing we perceive is, oh, we're feeling these cravings for the junk food. But if you meditate consistently, then these subtle uncomfortable sensations, they dissipate, they go away, and then your body can speak to you with its own wisdom. And what's the body's wisdom? Yeah, let's have a salad, not a Coca-Cola, maybe. That makes sense. So that's one of the many, many tangible benefits in everyday life. You meditate, your diet gets better, meaning your health gets better, meaning you have more energy, you get more done, meaning you lose weight if you want. If that's something you want, you'll get in better shape. And one more thing, I mentioned there is something specific you need to do with your meditation because it won't happen just from meditating. I already said it. Did you catch it? It's consistency. It's consistency. You have to meditate consistently to get this effect out of your meditation. In fact, it's better to meditate 20 minutes a day every day or 6 days a week than 2 hours a week once a week. It's kind of like when you're trying to boil water, you have to leave it on the flame or the stove consistently, right? If you put water on the stove and then take it off again, put it on again, switch it off, switch it on again, the water is never going to come to a boil. Even though you're always active, you're trying to heat it up, you're applying heat, you're busy doing stuff with a pot, but the water never comes to a boil unless you keep it on the flame consistently. And the same is true for meditation. Honestly, the same is true for everything, for learning a foreign language, for going to the gym, for professional success. Consistency is not some kind of extra bonus for super disciplined people. That's really just necessary. And here's the good news. The more you meditate, the easier it gets to be consistent. Because inconsistency also happens because of impurities in the mind, right? So this is kind of what's the opposite of a vicious circle? It's like a virtuous circle, right? So meditate more to get that benefit, to start craving those healthy foods, to stop craving those junk foods, which will kill you in the long run, and to avoid that getting worse, because these cravings get worse over time if they're not addressed, because the mental impurities accumulate and add up over time. And on that note, let's get into the nuts and bolts, the practical part of the podcast, the how to meditate more. And today we'll talk about how to make the brain faster, like a computer, like a CPU, like a hard drive. And I'll use that as an analogy because it really illustrates the point perfectly. You know, when I grew up, hard drives used magnetic disks and they got what's called fragmented, which made them slower. So from time to time, they had to be defragmented to make them fast again. And the same thing happens to our brains. So let me explain. Imagine you install your first program on your hard drive and it's written to the first available space on the hard drive. It fills up a sequence of sectors. Those are storage units on the hard drive in order. Then you install the second program, and the second program gets installed in the next available space, continuing that sequential storage, right? Now let's imagine you delete the first program, and that creates a gap. On the sequence of storage space sectors where the program used to be, there is now a gap. So now if you install a new program, a third program, the hard drive tries to fill the gap left by the first deleted program. So part of the new program gets stored in the gap and the rest is placed on the next available sectors elsewhere. Can you picture that? It's basically program 1 gets installed in the first space, program 2 gets installed in the second space, then program 1 gets deleted, that space opens up, and program 3 gets divided, and part of program 3 is in the open space left by program 1, and part of it is after the space filled up by program 2. So it's split up. The files of program 3 are now split up in two different places. And that is called fragmentation. Part of the program is on one part of the hard drive and another part of the program is on another part of the hard drive. Physically, there's a different section of the disk. And now it takes longer to load the program because the hard drive's read head has to move between different locations, between different physical locations to get all the parts of the files. So that used to happen with hard drives back in the day, and there was a solution to that. And the solution was called defrag. Defrag is short for defragmentation. So that was a software that recognized where these gaps are and it reorganized the data to make it contiguous again. And then performance went up. And you had to do this regularly or the computers would just get super slow over time. And many people didn't know. And then their computers just got slow until they weren't usable anymore. And then they bought a new computer or at least formatted the hard drive. Not necessary. Here's the thing. Our brains get defragmented too, just like these old school hard drives did. And they get cluttered and disorganized. What do they accumulate? They accumulate traumas, unprocessed memories, useless information, entertainment, toxic stuff from the news, unfinished thoughts, open loops, old arguments you had with people. All that causes friction, all that fragments the brain. And the result is the depression, the negativity, the boredom, laziness, emptiness, all these things that are friction in our life. And a slower brain, like a slower hard drive. And that's why I say meditation doesn't cost you any time. If you meditate, your brain gets faster, you get other things done faster, so you get back the time that you invested in meditation. And we just need to defrag the brain. So how do we defrag the brain? Well, it's simple. Meditation has that effect. If you do the right kind of meditation techniques, the ones I'll teach you over the course of these podcasts, will have that effect that will defrag your brain. And I'll also say one thing for hard cases. If you have a lot of unprocessed stuff, ayahuasca is like a power tool for defragging the brain. But I'll talk about that in a separate episode because it's kind of a big topic and not something I want to just throw out there in a sentence. I'll just give that as a preview. We'll talk about that in a future episode. So get rid of the clutter in your mind and all the bad stuff that has happened in your life. Point being, meditate more to get that benefit, to get a faster brain, to avoid getting cluttered and bogged down, to avoid it getting worse and worse over time, because this stuff accumulates with time, right? That's the point. But I want to move on. I want to get to the most important part of the podcast, the Dhamma discourse. And today we'll compare Christianity and Buddhism as possible paths towards enlightenment or towards Christ consciousness. So what's the straightest path to heaven, to nirvana? Do we get there faster or better with the teachings of the Buddha or with the teachings of Jesus? Who was more enlightened? Who was more divine? A debate that's been going on for thousands of years. People can't seem to figure it out. So tell you what, let's settle it the old-fashioned way in the ring. Here we go.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Clash of the Titans, the two undisputed spiritual heavyweight champions of the world. Introducing first, fighting out of the Middle Eastern corner, wearing a beige-colored tunic, weighing in at 141 pounds, with a professional record of 17 wins by knockout against the Pharisees. From Nazareth in Galilee, please welcome Yeshua ben Yosef. And now, introducing his opponent, fighting out of the Asian corner, wearing a saffron-colored Sangani, weighing in at 138 pounds, with a professional record of 17 wins by knockout against the Brahmins. From Lumbini in Nepal, here is Siddhartha Gautama! What an upset! The crowd is in absolute shock as we are told the Buddha has refused to initiate any violence whatsoever. But Jesus has flipped over a table and cracked a whip. I don't know what's gonna happen. All eyes on the ring. Let's get ready to rumble.
All right, let's get ready to rumble indeed. But before we get started, I want to clarify a couple of things about scripture and the historicity of all this stuff. I've cited a bit from a lot of different religion scriptures in episode 1, and mostly I've focused on Buddhist and Christian scriptures in episode 2 and 3. And there's a reason for that. Now, first, I'm not saying that scripture is 100% pure divine truth. I'm just saying it's worth having a look at this stuff. These are ancient wisdom traditions, thousands of years of wisdom of our ancestors. Maybe with some distortions, we can talk about that because both Buddhist and Christian scriptures were selected and aggregated by various councils over centuries. They weren't written by Jesus himself or the Buddha himself. So that's all I'll say for now, but they're worth looking at. At least I think we can agree on that. Second, it's interesting to note that they're remarkably similar. It's not just the golden rule that I talked about in episode 1. There's a book I recommend you check out. It's called Jesus and Buddha, The Parallel Saying by Marcus Borg. Marcus with a C and Borg is B-O-R-G. I highly recommend you check that out. Very interesting stuff. How come Jesus and the Buddha had such similar teachings? And another point is about history. Was Jesus a historical figure or was he an astrotheological allegory? This is a big debate going on these days, and I'll just comment on that very briefly because I know it'll come up in the comments. It's hard to deny the astrotheological connection with some of the story, but it's also clear that someone was teaching this stuff. Someone gave the Sermon on the Mount. Someone came up with this content that Jesus was teaching. So that's all I'll say for now. I'm not going to weigh in on this debate in any definitive way for now. And we'll talk more about that in future episodes. For now, let's have a closer look at the two religions, the two spiritual paths, Buddhism versus Christianity. And here's something interesting to note. One could describe Buddhism as the religion of the mind and Christianity as the religion of the heart. Because Buddhism obviously focuses on the mind. It's all about meditation, mental discipline, purifying the mind. And Christianity focuses on the heart. Have you noticed? It's about love. Love your God, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Christianity is about charity with a connotation of love, kindness, generosity, helping those in need out of love. It's about acts of love. So Buddhism is the religion of the mind and Christianity is the religion of the heart. So the human malaise, the spiritual disease that afflicts humanity, and yes, humanity is suffering from a spiritual disease. This is it. Too much mind and too little heart. By too much mind, I mean that the mind is out of control. Our minds are completely out of control. They're on autopilot. And you can prove that to yourself in 5 minutes. Just sit down and try to focus on the breath without thinking. You can't do it. Our minds are completely out of control. And I do not mean that the mind should ever be eliminated. It needs to be healed, not eliminated. Our minds are out of control and they drown out the heart. They mute the heart. They speak too much and too loudly, so we cannot hear the heart. So that's why we have this imbalance. Too much mind, too little heart. And both religions try to heal this imbalance. Both religions could almost be described as spiritual hospitals. Buddhism tries to rebalance it by reducing the mind chatter with meditation. And Christianity tries to rebalance the heart and the mind by strengthening the heart, by teaching people true care. And here's what I found. If you do your spiritual work from both angles at the same time, if you work on the mind with meditation and you work on the heart by developing true care, agape love, right? That higher form of divine love, you will make amazing progress on the spiritual path, much faster than if you focused only on one or the other. And a quick side note, in theory, you could do both with one denomination alone. Because if you dig deeper, Buddhism also has the heart-centered approach. It also has that element. And Christianity also has the mental element. What we know as charitable love of neighbor in Christianity is compassion in Buddhism. And what we know as meditation in Buddhism is prayer of quiet in Christianity, such as Saint Teresa of Avila in the Catholic tradition, also the Carmelites, the Trappists, the Cistercians. You can also find prayer of quiet in the Orthodox Church, in the Protestant Church, and many other churches. So if you go deep, Christianity actually has the mental practice. And if you go deep, Buddhism actually has the practice of the heart. But it's really about the heart and the mind, and you need both. There is a big myth out there that we need to eliminate the mind to get to a state of no mind. And that's partially true because we do want to gain control over the mind. It shouldn't rule us, but the mind will always be there. It's a very useful tool. It's a very useful servant. It's just a very dangerous master. And it's taken over, it's running the show, and it's ruining everything. Look around in the world. This is the result of the mind running the show. So it's not about eliminating the mind and getting into the heart. It's about balancing both. And note how this maps over to my first 2 episodes. Episode 1 was about the heart, about doing good for others. That comes from the heart. Episode 2 was about the mind, about the real definition of truth. That's a mental concept, right? See how it all fits together? And now let's have a quick look at the science here. It's all about the heart and the mind. That has also been described as the left brain and the right brain. And yes, I know both hemispheres are involved in most mental processes, but there are tendencies for specialization, if not strict divisions. So the left brain, right brain model is a heuristic, I know that, but it holds true in terms of broad tendencies, and it's a very useful model. And it's pretty well known these days, but a quick review. The left brain is all about logical reasoning, mathematics and science, analytical thinking, sequential processing, fact-oriented thinking. In one word, the left brain is about mind. This is also known as the sacred masculine, the yang energy. The right brain is about creativity, about holistic thinking, about intuition, music and art, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, daydreaming, imagination. In one word, it's about the heart, the sacred feminine, the yin energy. Now, I mentioned I was a working musician in my 20s. I was a pianist, and I got my piano degree from a music conservatory that specialized in brain science. My piano professor worked with brain science institutes in France, in Italy, and in Germany. And he was focused on gifted kids, on piano geniuses, on child prodigies. That was his focus. And here's the interesting thing. He found that they all missed something. Nobody was a perfect genius. Nobody was complete. One child may be amazing at sight reading, at seeing sheet music and playing it on the piano at first sight. But then maybe that kid's intonation wasn't great, or his emotional expression of the music. Another kid may be amazing at hearing a song and playing it back by ear, but then that kid may not be great at improvisation, and so forth, right? So practically everyone has some kind of brain imbalance. No brain is perfect, complete, and totally balanced. Now, personally, my brain imbalance was a left brain imbalance. That means I scored very high in math, in physics, on IQ tests. I did really well with computers, in the sciences, but I wasn't very creative. I didn't have a very good memory. And so I started to really target those areas of my brain. I worked on my right brain very consciously and very deliberately. I made a career as a professional musician. That's a right brain activity. I spent a lot of time socializing. That develops the right brain. I learned a lot of different languages, which is a lot of memorization. That's a right brain function. I worked as a piano teacher and specifically teaching children. That activates the right brain. I studied a lot of spirituality, a lot of meditation. So all these help to develop the right brain. And for those of us who have a left brain imbalance, like I did, these activities are incredibly useful. Now here is where it gets really interesting. This is one of the most interesting things I ever learned about spirituality and science. Which, by the way, there is no contradiction between spirituality and science properly understood. Spirituality properly understood does not contradict science. And science properly understood does not contradict spirituality. But that's a topic for another episode. I just wanted to give you that as a side note for now. So here's the big insight. Are you ready? Studies have shown that advanced meditation practitioners often have increased connectivity and thickness in the corpus callosum. That's the bundle of nerves, the nerve fibers that connects the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So that makes communication between them easier. That allows for better integration of both hemispheres. Remember how I said it's about balancing both? Balancing the heart and the mind? Balancing the left brain and the right brain? Meditation does that. It helps cognitive function and it helps emotional regulation. It gives you more balanced use of both logical and creative thinking processes. So meditation can balance the brain. It's about activating, balancing, and connecting both halves of the brain. The yin and the yang get united. Have you heard of unity consciousness, of non-duality? That's what that means. That's the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, the yin and the yang, the heart and the mind, the left brain and the right brain, united within, right? Not talking about men and women. I'm talking about the masculine and the feminine aspects of consciousness united within. The yin and the yang in union. That's also known in the mystery traditions as the alchemical wedding. And something else fascinating. Activating and connecting the two brain hemispheres activates the pineal gland, the third eye. Is the third eye a myth? All right, I'll talk more about that in future episodes. For now, here's a 30,000-foot view. It's about the heart and the mind, activating, balancing, and connecting them both. The heart activated develops care. We talked about that in episode 1. You want to do good because you care. And the mind activated starts to perceive truth. We talked about that in episode 2. What is truth? Put those together. If you perceive truth and you have care, you will spontaneously go into right action. And I talked about that in episode 3. That was one of the last few keys in episode 3. So that was episode 1, 2, and 3. And now in episode 4, I landed the plane for you and tied it all together so you can see how all these episodes build on each other, right? And that's why I recommend to go in order and in sequence. That's why it's important to learn counting before addition, before multiplication, and so forth. So in conclusion, it's about balance. It's not about eliminating the mind and getting into the heart, quote unquote. That would be a right brain imbalance. It's about balancing heart and mind. My favorite image of the yin and yang symbol that I've ever seen is one where one of the two dots is a brain and the other dot is a heart. All right, I want to make one more very interesting point here, and this is kind of freaky. Maybe you've heard of the Hermetic principle of correspondence. As above, so below. Check this out. Buddhism is the religion of the mind, of the left brain. You purify the mind with meditation. Christianity is the religion of the heart, of the right brain. Love God, love thyself, love thy neighbor. Now check this out. Christianity, the religion of the Western hemisphere of the earth, is the religion of the right hemisphere of the brain. And Buddhism, the religion of the Eastern hemisphere of the earth, is the religion of the left hemisphere of the brain. Is that fascinating? I recently rewatched K-Pax, the movie with Kevin Spacey where he claims to be from another planet. And there's a very interesting quote in that movie where Kevin Spacey says, K-Pax is most lovely when K-Mon and K-Ril are in conjunction. Those are our two sons, what you would call Agape and Satori. Did you catch that? He said it's most lovely when Agape and Satori are in conjunction. Agape is cosmic love, it's the heart. Satori is a state of the clarity of the mind. So heart and mind in conjunction, that's when it's most lovely. So again, you have to activate both, balance both, connect both. Now let's see what the spirits have to say about all this. Let's see if we get any channeled communications, see if we can get some further clarifications from beyond.
For the following segment, listener discretion is advised. No claims were made as to whether its content is a comedic voice acting performance or a channeled message from beyond. The views expressed are those of the entity and do not necessarily reflect the views of the medium. Manny Mandala and the Meditate More podcast assume no responsibility for actions taken based on these communications, which are offered for entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as advice. Always consult a qualified professional from the 3D physical plane before acting on information from the spirit realm.
I have talked to you before. In episode 1, I told you have heard that this life is a test. Yes, indeed, this life is a test. And there is one question on the test. Do you remember the one question on the test? What's the difference between right and wrong? There is a very clear, very objective difference between right and wrong. Humanity has lost it. Someone upstairs is very angry about this situation because it is not very difficult to know the difference between right and wrong. Don't initiate harm to other beings. Help those who are suffering. This should be simple stuff. How could you forget? How could you forget? You are just focused on yourselves all day long. Everyone is thinking me, 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 all day, every day. The truth is, most humans do have good intentions. They want to do the right thing, but they don't know what the right thing is. They don't know the difference between right and wrong. They will fail the test. That's why they try to look up the answer in holy books. But you have to know the answer. The good news is, the difference between right and wrong is written on your heart. But you cannot hear it because your mind is too noisy. Your mind chatters too much. It drowns out the voice of your heart. That is why you need to meditate more to silence the mind. As you silence the mind, you will be able to hear the voice in your heart. And the voice in your heart will tell you very clearly the difference between right and wrong. This is very important. This is the most important of all questions. This is the reason you're here. So activate both brain hemispheres, balance both brain hemispheres, and connect both brain hemispheres. And the answer to the one question on the test will be very clear. How do you achieve that? How do you activate both brain hemispheres? How do you balance both brain hemispheres? How do you connect both brain hemispheres? Meditate more, meditate more, meditate more. Okay, guys, I'm back. So who wins? Jesus or Buddha? Who won the fight? Jesus is more focused on doing good, but the intention to do good without truth leads to bad outcomes, as we saw in episode 2. And it's not possible to truly activate the heart with an impure mind anyway. It always interferes. Buddha was more focused on purifying the mind, but a pure mind without an active heart, without activated care, leads to passivity, which you see a lot in the meditation community, right? People focused on themselves, as per episode 1, which in a world of suffering like ours, being passive is a cosmic crime. There's a lot of suffering. We have to help. Everybody has to help. So who wins? You need both. Purify the mind and activate the heart. Purify the mind and activate the heart. All right? So meditate more because it will balance and connect your two brain hemispheres. That's been proven in brain scanners and scientific studies. This is not about religion, guys. I reference scripture, but this is solid science here. All right, and I have a few more very important points. Make sure you stick around for these because we have some absolutely life-changing killer content coming up next week, and I'll tell you all about that in a second. First, if you like this episode, you'll probably also love the Meditate More Challenge. You've seen how life-changing a consistent meditation practice really is. It will literally balance your brain, defrag your brain, make your brain faster. It'll help you to eat healthy easily, make you crave healthy foods instead of junk foods. So if you have that problem, if you would like to meditate more, but you can't make your meditation practice stick and consistent, that will sort it out for you. It's free for a limited time. I'm not sure how long for. I'm still building the website and all the infrastructure. But as soon as I get payment processing set up, I'll start charging for the Meditate More Challenge. So if you're curious, check it out while it's still free. And you can do that at meditatemorechallenge.com. And if you like this episode, do me a favor too. Think if you know somebody who's interested in spirituality, in meditation, in the topics I talked about today, and send them this episode. In fact, the best place to send them to is meditatemorepodcast.com. They can listen right there on the website. They can download the audio or the video, or they can scroll down a bit and listen on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or whatever they want. I'm on like 93 different platforms. And you should subscribe, of course, if you haven't yet, so you don't miss the coming episodes. The best way to subscribe is to go to mannymandala.com. That's M-A-N-N-Y, mannymandala.com. And join the Meditate More Inner Circle. That's free. And you'll get an email right away every time a new episode is ready. You'll also get exclusive bonus content that I don't publish anywhere else, starting with the Meditate More Challenge. Or if you don't want that, if you just want the podcast, then scroll down a bit for Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and so forth. That's also on meditatemorepodcast.com. And you do want to be subscribed because in the next episode, we'll talk about how to use meditation to strengthen your memory to the point where you'll remember events from your childhood as if it was yesterday. And some claim even past lives. So we'll talk about past lives a bit. Second, I'll teach you how to balance your life for real because it's easy to get in shape if you had nothing else to do, right? It's easy to get all your work done if you had nothing else to do. It's easy to take care of your social life if you had nothing else to do, but how do you balance it all? How do you do it all? We'll talk about that next week. And of course, we'll talk about the truth discovery method, the lost secret that teaches you how to find truth. In episode 2, we talked about what truth is. Now we'll talk about how to find it. How can you really know for sure that something is truth and not opinion? All that in the next episode of the Meditate More podcast. For now, go to meditatemorepodcast.com, subscribe and follow me on social, and sign up to the challenge to get a consistent meditation practice going, because only with consistency are you going to reap the benefits. So take the challenge so you don't end up procrastinating again, and you can find that at meditatemorechallenge.com. So thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next episode. So make sure to subscribe to the podcast now. And special thanks to Mariano Rogin and Lex van Zommeren for providing some of their music for the podcast. Thank you for the music, guys. I really appreciate it. And remember to meditate more, meditate more, meditate more, because it is so, so worth it.